We have all had an opportunity to review the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
Motion.
Second.
Mr. McGuffey has moved. Mrs. Thompson has seconded. All in favor? Aye. Next, we've all had an opportunity to review the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the 2023 regular board meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries. Now we're on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Green.
Thank you, Dr. Sivak. Good evening, board members, to all of our team JPS. We'll begin, as we typically do, with some video highlights presented by our instructional television team.
Today marks our first day of the consolidation of Peoples Middle School and Whitney Middle School.
Two Jackson Public Schools unite to share the 2023-24 school year.
District volunteers, community volunteers, just everyone on board to help our scholars understand that this is indeed a positive situation that we're going to be in.
Peoples Middle School welcomes staff and scholars from Whitten Middle School so repairs can proceed at Whitten.
We all know the JPS way. We are all team JPS, so my expectations are that school is held normally.
Whitten Elementary students will occupy the second floor, while students from Peoples will be on the first floor.
Welcome all of the students and all of the parents, and to let them know that their children are in good hands with Jackson Public Schools with this combination.
Preparing graduating seniors for the next step in life.
That could be college, that could be the military, that could be trade school. It's nice for them to be exposed and for them to know.
Jackson Public Schools hosted the annual Senior College Fair at the Environmental Learning Center.
This is Brittany Vice, and this is Dr. Carrington.
I try to get as much information as I can so that I can pursue my dreams as far as music performance and music education and also photography.
Seniors from across the JPS district met with recruiters from many colleges and universities.
Over 75 departments and colleges from various colleges, community colleges throughout the state of Mississippi and even the southeastern region.
Scholars learned about applications, financial aid, scholarships, student housing, and much more.
But it also gives us the opportunity to network and be able to interact with people that are at the college so we can possibly get other opportunities that you wouldn't know about just by going on the website or going up to the college for a tour.
I read 51 books over the summer.
Top schools for having the most books read for Division I, Obama Magnet.
A day of fun. A day of food.
They got me on the grill here.
So I'm going to enjoy the fellowship, the fun, and of course the grill as well.
A day of recognition at the JPS Summer Reading Homecoming Celebration.
We do want to recognize all of our scholars that are in Division II.
JPS scholars who spent their summer immersed in the world of books were honored for their dedication to learning and their love for reading. For more information about Jackson Public Schools, please visit our website at jackson.k12.ms.us. Follow us on Facebook at Jackson Public Schools, on Instagram at JPS Student Voices, on Twitter at JPS District, Comcast Channels 18 and 19, and YouTube at youtube.com/JPSITV.
Heavy issues to deal with over the last few weeks and few board meetings. And so we thought we would go on a love offensive this evening and share with you several, I think, good news stories. And so we'll begin with board members, just to continue our learning and development as educators. We held a district-wide professional development day this past Friday, September the 15th. And you might recall that we proposed an additional 5 days of PD for this school year, and you graciously supported us by approving the calendar and the added expenditure on behalf of our educators. I've asked Dr. Cormack to join us, our Deputy Superintendent, to join us and share just a brief recap of this powerful day of educator development.
Good evening. This past Friday, we had the great pleasure of hosting our first full-day professional development during this school year. None of our scholars were present, and so it was a day focused on adult learning and a commitment to our core value of a growth mindset. We appreciate the board's support for the expanded calendar and a sizable investment in our faculty and staff. Across all academic divisions and operations department, each area and division received differentiated and relevant professional development. We're very proud of what occurred Friday. In these photos, you see some examples across divisions, elementary, middle, and high school. Some of our many offerings included training for our AP Social Studies educators from the College Board. The board, you all recently supported our IB training, and so we made that investment. Montessori learning, our nurses were trained, coaches received training for our English learner educators across the district. We all responded to Dr. Green's charge and mantra that everybody needs a coach. And so as a personal privilege, I want to thank our academic leadership team, each one of you for your coordination and your many efforts, hands to make light the work in terms of supporting the moving parts. But across the district, 3,000 educators were trained and got something for them that was specifically for them. And so we very much appreciate your support, and our next full day of development will be offered on February 16th, 2024.
Thank you, Dr. Cormack. I asked Dr. Cormack to just share a little bit of that information. This is, we could easily kind of breeze past this and just say, hey, we had a PD day, because those are not uncommon, PD days. What is less common and what we haven't done much of is in the middle of the school year scheduling a full extra day that's not about parent conferences or not an early release day, but a full day to do this, and the added attention that our team has put on to ensuring that all of our team members had something that was specialized for them. And so our AP teachers aren't attending just a normal literacy training or something around social and emotional learning, which is important, but we really made the effort to provide programming that was special to each of our team members. And so the reports are really strong. Folks seem to really appreciate the time and attention and effort and planning and all the things that went into making the day happen. There were lots of logistics, as you might imagine, but folks leaned in. And so again, huge kudos to Dr. Cormack and the instructional leadership team in total who helped to make it happen. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you, Doc. And board members, as you know, and as we saw in the video reel there, Witten and Peoples are now co-located in the Peoples Middle School building for the remainder of this year. I was able to visit today and spend a little time in the building and observe a student meeting. I think it was an 8th grade student meeting. And the school principals have planned several activities before yesterday, which was the launch of the co-location, but also throughout this week and beyond, just to help to build relationships and community and all that sort of thing, both for scholars and for team members. And so I've asked the two principals, the Peoples Middle School principal, Dr. Naomi Welch, and the Witten Middle School principal, Paula Epps, to join us and share a little more of their reflections and any updates from this week. We'll invite them up now. Maybe next time we'll give you a walk-up song or something. Theme music.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm Paula Epps, principal of Wheaton Middle School.
I am Naomi Welch, principal of Peoples Middle School.
And we just want to first just start off by saying we've actually had a great 2 first days. We know that there were challenges that everyone anticipated, but we've actually had a great 2 first days. As Dr. Green mentioned, we do have several Welcome Week activities that were planned for today in collaboration with our Office of Climate and Wellness, as well as our middle school divisional coaches. And Dr. Welch will just share a few of those that we have participated in this week.
So the wonderful thing that I've been able to experience this week are our watchdogs coming out and welcoming our students into the building every morning. The parents have expressed that they are so secure and they feel safe with them there. We have been able to meet with our scholars every morning, but especially this morning we got them together as a group. And our scholars are positive, our teachers are positive, everyone is positive and excited about what we're doing this year at Peoples.
And some of those activities include, as well as, we know this is an adjustment, so we're incorporating SEL moments every day. We have a fun way that the divisional coaches create a Google slide with some fun facts about both schools as well as staff and administration. So children are able to go through that and kind of decide and learn some different things about each other. So those are just a few of the things that we have planned this week, and actually some ongoing things long term, but we've just had a great first 2 days and definitely appreciate all of the district as well as community support that have come out for us.
Well, board members, again, we've been talking about the plans and leading up to the launch of this co-location for this school year, and I was prepared to just talk about what I've seen and some of what I've heard from others, but I thought it was important that you hear from the school leaders themselves. And I also want to lift up that, this was nothing that anyone planned, and so, it's something that we had to respond to, an issue we had to respond to. But while I'm so thankful for all of the support across the district, around the community, our watchdogs in particular, but others who have just been so present and supportive, these two leaders right here, these two ladies right here, I've not experienced, I've not seen even a whisper of ego or territorial behaviors. It's all been about how do we support these two school communities in being served and educating these scholars with excellence through the remainder of this year. And it's just been a joy to watch the two of you work together and partner together and play off of one another's ideas and just all the things that go into this. And so I do want to say publicly to you and to your teams, thank you, because that's been really, really transparent and obvious to, I think, most of us who've had any time with you all. Thank you for your leadership. Sincerely.
Dr. Green,
yes,
I know two of our board members have been very engaged with the Whitton and Peoples community, and I know you all have shared some thoughts with me, and I just invite both of y'all, Mrs. Thompson and Mr. McGuffey, to just maybe share some of the positive feedback with the community that you share with me.
Sure. So I had opportunity to participate in the parent meeting, and kind of heard a lot of good feedback from even the parents at that point. And then on yesterday evening, I had opportunity to stop by the open house, kind of incognito, and just kind of go around and talk. And some of the teachers, they didn't know I was a board member, so that's a good thing. I want to hear, and see what is happening in the building in real time and just kind of experience it. And everything was really good, very positive, good energy, positive feedback from everybody that I did speak with, and just seeing that, even the parents, hearing them talk about the way the building looks and a good improvement from where they were. This thing we didn't make it happen, but we had to respond, and you all have responded in a very good way and a positive way, and I'm so excited to be a part of the good things that are happening within JPS.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I had attended the parents meeting with Ms. Thompson as well, and had an opportunity to go to the school yesterday morning. So I went, wanted to volunteer, wanted to see it, and coming out of that meeting, I talked to a number of parents as we were kind of walking out the door, and the one thing that anybody said, sort of as the concern, right, was, I just don't know when these kids first get here. These schools are in competition. Well, I don't know how that's going to look. So I wanted to go the first day, right? And I can't say enough about the work that Principal Welch and that Principal Epps put in, the work that the transportation group put in, the work that the cafeteria staff put in. Those kids coming in, they knew they were going to go from 260 or however many kids were there to 500 plus kids. And I talked to two of them. They said, yeah, we showed up early because we knew we were going to have to get more food ready. I mean, every single person was chipping in. And I was there greeting kids as they were coming in the door. There was none of that. Whatever those concerns were, it was only upbeat. It was only positive. It was handled so beautifully that if you did not know it was day one, you would not have known it was day one. Like that's as good a compliment as I can give you.
Wow.
Is that it worked. And so, I mean, it was just kind of cool to be around it. I absolutely agree. There's a lot of excitement in that building for what both of those schools are contributing to one another. And something that Dr. Cormack actually said when we were first proposing this stuck in the back of my mind, which was, we don't view this as a hardship, we view this as an opportunity because we get to fill gaps with everything. And that's what it felt like. So I just want to praise everybody who's been involved in that, whether it's the school leaders, whether it's the teachers, whether it's the staff on site. Everybody was on their game. It was great.
I want to add one other thing, the positive messaging. The positive messaging and the two pieces of the puzzle coming together, to make one. I was like, okay, this is so cool, to let people know that we're one, oh, that's it, we're one. And the better we can understand that and we work and operate as one unit, then the better we will be as a district. All of the schools deserve the same kind of excellence, the same kind of support, the same kind of love. We're one district. We might be individual schools, but we're one, and I love the theme of us working as one. We'll get more accomplished.
Indeed.
Also appreciated a free T-shirt. So.
One thing we do in JPS is T-shirts. So, yeah. I know people. It's a thing. It's part of the culture. What's that? Thank you all for that feedback. I really appreciate you adding and sharing what you saw. Again, I try to share from different perspectives, but it's important when several of us are seeing very similar things. And the thing I'll say to the team and the broader community is, the start of school, there's a honeymoon phase. And so, as much as I know that folks worked really, really hard to have a strong launch and one that speaks to the positive culture and community and whatnot that we want to see going forward, the real work continues as we live into the protocols and expectations and keep teaching those to young people, and we adults keep holding them and ourselves accountable for what we said we were going to do. And so just want to encourage the team to keep that work going, and for all of us to not lose sight of these are children. They are middle schoolers, they are children, and from time to time they might make bad decisions. That doesn't mean that this in total was a bad decision or that those children can't recover from those. And so want to just keep all of that in front of us as we move forward. But I'm certainly hopeful and believing and expecting that we'll continue to deliver with excellence and that our scholars will have a great year. So kudos again. And now, you saw some of this in the reel as well, but a little more on this. We encourage our scholars to read each summer and to keep their minds active and promote lifelong reading and learning. And while we ask scholars to read at least one required book based on their grade level, we do challenge them to read as many books as they can during the summer. And we also make reading a contest of sorts, so that scholars compete for the top reader rights. And then we celebrate all of those scholars at our summer reading celebration, and you saw some of that in the reel. Our lead librarian, Ms. Jeanette Wissington, will join us now and tell us a little more about the summer reading celebration, and will introduce our top readers. Ms. Wissington?
Good evening.
Good evening.
This summer, 15,586 books were read by JPS scholars, employees, and community members.
Amen.
A total of 14,596 books were read by our scholars. Each scholar is required during the summer months to read 3 books, the required summer reading book, title, and 2 titles of their choice, and complete a log for each. The students today were recognized as top readers for having read the most books during the summer months, and will receive an additional incentive as well. It's a gift card that was given to us by the Partners in Education's office. And
Nice.
so when I call your name, I want you to come up and receive your certificate that's going to be given to you by the JPS board, as well as receive your gift card also. So our first person from Division 1, Elementary Division 1 is Zoe Smith. She's a student at Casey Elementary. Zoe read 100 books.
Whoa!
All right, Zoe.
From Division 2, Samaya Bryant. She's from John Hopkins Elementary. She read 48 books. 48.
Awesome.
The middle school division, Denari Middleton from Northwest Jackson IB. He read 25 books.
Congratulations.
And the high school division, Denaje Trimble from Wingfield, 51 books read. I just want to point out that Denaje and Denari are brothers, and they have been doing this summer reading thing for 3 years, and they've always placed in top readers. So that's the 2 brothers. Zoe is a first comer, 100 books, does well, and Samaya, first time participant as well to make top. So they've done a great job. Samaya Bryant. Okay. That's it. At this time,
What school was Zoe?
Zoe is at Casey Elementary. Samaya is at John Hopkins. Denaje is at Northwest Jackson IB, and Denaje is at Wingfield.
Awesome.
I also would like to ask the parents of these students to stand and be recognized. And if the principals are here, let's recognize them as well. And I also want to thank our area superintendents, because this year our participation was a plus more than it was last year with our students, and I do appreciate them getting on board with us and encouraging our students to read this summer.
Awesome.
Everyone look this way for me, please. Smile, please. Here we go. Hey, here it is. Oh, right there. 1, 2, 3. One more time. And 1, 2, 3. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, this is so exciting. Thank you, Ms. Wissington. So appreciate your support and leadership in this this program. How many years have you been doing this, Ms. Wissington? 26 during the summer reading? As lead librarian. And several years, yes. Let's give her a round of applause. Several years leading this effort along with others. I did want to just note, I had to double check. I thought I had heard that Ms., and I lost her name already, Samaya? Samaya had been a top reader before. She's participated before, but this is her first time as a top reader. But those 2 brothers, the 2 gentlemen, apparently they're crackerjack readers, voracious readers, and have won this, been our top readers previously. Let's give them all another huge round of applause. So I think I need to bring this love offensive to a close, but do want to thank you, board members, for your continued support, to all the team members who've helped us to create these experiences and supporting one another, even if you weren't leading out in those programs. I know tons of support has gone into all of it, and it doesn't go unnoticed. Thank you for helping to make JPS shine. With that, Dr. Sivak, I turn the meeting back over to you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Green. We will try to continue on the theme of Love Fest this evening, though I can't promise it. Let me just start by saying we don't have any public comments tonight, but for those who would like to make public comments, the board does believe it's very important, and we do encourage public comment. Anyone who would like to make public comment should reach out to Ms. Rosalind Williams at roswilliams@jackson.k12.ms.us prior to the board meeting, or be in the boardroom prior to 5:15 to sign up. All right. What's that?
I just want to make one comment.
Please,
back
Mrs.
to
Thompson.
The videos with, I think there was 2 different events that were used out at the Environmental Learning Center. I just want to say kudos to you all for using outdoor space and you know, just exposing our children to something beautiful in an outdoor space. You know, for just thinking outside the box. Get out the auditorium and get some fresh air and be a part of that. And it looks beautiful out there. I hadn't been out there personally. I've been invited, and I know I need to go, but from what I'm seeing on the videos and the pictures, it looks amazing.
Thank you so much for noticing that, and I failed to flag that. We are very, very pleased with the evolution of the Environmental Learning Center and the increased programming that we're able to do out there, hosting other events, the reading fair, the high school career fair, college fair, but also the science-related activities that our scholars are learning out there, and several other. We've had some adult, some team member events out there. So yeah, stay tuned. It's pretty beautiful, and Mr. Gibson is just doing a fabulous job of maintaining, envisioning, evolving that space to create something really wonderful for our scholars.
Amazing.
I went out. It looks amazing.
All right, the Love Fest continues. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Maybe that's also a signal for our next board retreat or working session that we do it down there. All right. Board members, our next item is an information-only item, and what you will see in our board prep materials, we had a resolution for a limited tax note for up to $57 million. I asked Dr. Green to break this up into 2 pieces, and so we're going to go through the 2 pieces. The first is more about the plan, how we plan to use it, and this will be, I wanted to have a little bit more runway for us to hear what the plans are, possibly iterate, and then the information, the action item will be later in the board meeting where the team of consultants has been identified, and that's really about sizing the investment, getting the team in place. So that will be an action item, and we really need to get them hired to begin to put all the pieces in place to bring the resources in. We have, the team will explain this, we have some debt rolling off, and we want to make sure we're able to basically re-up with additional debt so that it doesn't affect the tax rolls. And so again, there'll be more information later. So with that, Ms. Purnell will be presenting the information, our Executive Director of Business Services, on the request to approve a resolution declaring the necessity of the intention to borrow. And just, Ms. Purnell, it's great to see you. Ms. Purnell was our interim CFO from when Ms. Miller retired to when Mr. Burke took over as Chief Operating Officer, and held the fort down. And I'm genuinely, I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're leading this effort. So,
thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Well, good evening, Dr. Sivak, President of the board members, Dr. Green, Superintendent, my colleagues, and JPS team. On behalf of Mr. Burke today, in his absence, the district, the administration is recommending the approval of the submitted resolution to borrow by limited tax notes a maximum principal amount of not to exceed $57 million for the purposes of providing funds for making repairs, alterations, addition to school buildings of the district for the purpose of erecting school buildings and other building used for school purposes, for the purpose of purchasing heating plants, air conditioning, fixtures, and equipment for such buildings, including but not limited to the procurement of laptops, tablet computers, and computers for the purpose of equipping school buildings, for the purpose of purchasing land for the school for school purposes, for the purpose of purchasing school buses and transportation equipment, and for the purpose of improving and equipping such lands for school recreational and athletic purposes. And this is authorized by the Section 3759-101 Mississippi Code of 1972. So I know there are some questions that Dr. Sivak had asked in regards to the plan, and in that information that was provided by the district in his and the question was, one of the things were the facility upgrades that we are trying to do. Also, the district is asking for a limit up to $57 million, but if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Green, correct me if I'm mistaken, but I think we're trying to go up to at least $30 million for our repairs. And Mr. Burke has pretty much detailed and said on how those was going to be utilized. Facilities upgrades was like $17 million, athletics facilities 10, and emergency purchases for $3 million, which represent the entire $30 million that we are hoping to recommend at some point in time.
And I'll just add to that, that we've continued to iterate on the planning as we've adjusted downward the amount that we're seeking to receive through this process. We've been very clear throughout our thinking and conversation with our hopeful partners in this that we want to not negatively impact the tax liability as a result of this, but to optimize or to take advantage of an opportunity here to do some really cool and needed things. We started with a much longer list, as you heard some of them, and as we've continued our discussion and tried to focus in on some of the major needs, as you see in the responses that were provided to questions, really two big buckets is what has lifted up for us. Continued facilities repairs and upgrades, to include the HVAC and some other renovations, some restrooms and facades at a few of our schools that really need some a refresh. Lighting and security systems to the extent that we need those and can't pay for them out of other dollars that we have. And then perhaps if we need to clear some spaces that are buildings that are in disrepair or challenging to us, some opportunities to do that, should that be a decision that the board makes going down the road. But also, we want to make sure we deliver on some of our athletic programming. We want to continue to build on some of the great work that's already been done with bond dollars, ensure that we're not overtaxing the beautiful new fields that we have by those being the lone fields or the main ones used. And we know we've got some other sports that haven't received the same love. So our swim team is building and developing and increasing across the district, not just at one school. And so we know that there's some opportunities there. And continuing to build out the sports complex at Hardy. So excited to do more there. And of course, soccer and the baseball, softball options for our scholars throughout the district. And so that's where we are right now. We've got a little bit of time to keep iterating on that, and especially with the facilities upgrades as we get more information. Obviously, though, that situation is dynamic. Systems go down, needs occur, and we have to respond to those. But that's how we're thinking about the use of those dollars now. There's much more need than the 30, even the 57 million. There's much more need, but we're excited to have this opportunity to do some things and to for them to be big and splashy enough for community and scholars and families to see and appreciate. So I think we'll pause there and see if there are any questions from team members, from board members.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Board members, what questions do we have for the administration?
This may be the time to do this, maybe later, so feel free to punt it if this ain't the time. But can we get a little bit of insight in how I see the note that's actually rolling off, and I see the overall expenditure, whether it's 30 million, whether it's 57 million, it's not a dollar for dollar match. I understand that's not necessary for maintaining a debt leverage or anything like that, but can we go through the thinking of going above and beyond what's rolling off? This isn't really perfect replacement, right? So I just wondering if we can get a little bit of clarity on that.
So we have some friends. I think this is probably a good time to phone a friend.
I have our financial advisors, Mr. Namely Thompson.
Yeah. Why don't I just allow Mr. Thompson? Mr. Thompson's been before the board previously on some other financial matters. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you.
And are you good on the question, or are you?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
As you said, you're exactly correct. It's not a dollar for dollar match. Also, if you look at it there's a couple of different buckets. You have some general obligation bonds that are secured by millages that were approved by the constituents in an election. These are strictly underneath the 3 mil note, the limited tax bond, so that you're levying 3 mils to pay for not only the ones that are rolling off, but a couple other. If you look at just those 3 bond issues that are outstanding secured by those 3 bonds, it's going to have a slow graduation. And so if you look at just those 3 on an overall debt limit, it's going to keep it level. And so if we go up to 57 million, we can still stay underneath the 3 mils that you levy. With the district looking at only doing approximately 30 million, yeah, it'll come underneath it, and so you're still fine there. But the 57 was designed and structured and sized around just that 3 mil levy.
To kind of chew up to utilize is maybe a better way.
And let me say, let me say a majority of school districts underneath that 3 mil levy, they make sure they issue enough to keep that going, and they use that as the district here is looking to do it as well for renovations, some capital improvement, things of that nature. It's when there's a huge capital project, they go into that general obligation and go out for election of the people. But from hearing from the projects that the district is talking about, this fits perfectly underneath the limited tax structure.
And just one more question. I think I've conceptualized this correctly, but all of this is essentially, these projects are essentially additive to what we pay for out of our general budget, right? We're not saying that we won't make HVAC repairs or whatever out of that stuff. This is additions.
Right, absolutely. Additional revenue and resourcing to address the issues that exist that we struggle to keep up with our regular budget. And to do more of the urgent projects sooner.
Sure.
Right? To be more aggressive in addressing them. Other questions or wonderings or any of that?
I had one, and this has come since we met yesterday. I know that one of the line items that potentially would be proposed is around the raising of buildings.
Yes, sir.
Could the resources also be used to invest in an empty building as part of a larger economic development project that fit under good things for good people? I don't, so I just wanted to, I don't have anything in mind, but it's just trying to think like.
How expansive can
Yeah,
it
and
be?
if there's opportunity to leverage other resources from other governmental entities.
So I'm not a lawyer, nor do I play one on TV. But I will say the proceeds are governed underneath this structure, this limited tax structure that we talked about, what you can use it for, and I'd have to, and I'm looking at our counsel out there, Elizabeth Clark with Butler Snow. She might be able to at least talk about the uses that you can do with these proceeds.
Are you speaking to a school-owned building? Okay.
We have many closed school buildings, former school buildings, and so I'm thinking of ways to creatively use, not a lot, because we could exhaust the whole budget on our existing schools, but if there was an opportunity.
Yeah, so as long as the building is going to be owned by the school, then you can typically use it and build it or construct it, however, for whatever purposes that you want to use. If there's any private use, so if you were going to rent out certain spaces and things like that, we would have to evaluate how much of it you'd be renting out from a tax exempt perspective. Because if you rent it out or if it's not strictly used for school purposes, then it can cause the bonds to become taxable. And if you issue taxable debt, it's a slightly higher interest rate. Okay. So if you chose to do something like that, you could carve out that portion, potentially issue tax-exempt bonds with a taxable portion, and or, depending on the size of it, there is a little bit of what we call bad use in tax-exempt bonds that allows for a certain percentage to be used for non-governmental purposes.
Okay, that's actually
Does that
really
answer your
helpful. It does. So, in some ways, if there was something that would come up, it's the tax exempt versus the taxable portion. And what I'm hearing is if there is a taxable portion, that could potentially be used for something like I just described.
Like community type involvement, like a theater or something where the community comes in and uses your school facility, something like that.
Maybe community maker space or job, I don't know.
Health center, affordable housing.
Yeah. Then you'd start running into issues outside of your public financing issues. Then you'd run into state law issues, the whole good things for good people. What you then start running into is dependent on how you structured it. If you structured it, you know, that legislation allows the district to donate, sell, lease property to other entities. So if you essentially took one of those buildings and you donated it to, say, a nonprofit entity to run and use as a community theater, you'd probably then run into a state law constitutional issue about whether or not you could spend public monies to improve a building that is going to be either owned or leased or operated by another entity. What you would probably have to start looking at is whether or not, you know, if you wanted to get creative, you might start looking at joint ventures or partnerships or things like that, where you not only maintain school district ownership, but you maintain some school district use. So if you were looking at after hours use by, say, community groups, but school district use during the day, you'd have to get creative in how you structured it, because ultimately, if you're going to give it to, you know, for money or no, but if you're going to have somebody else who is using it, then you've got that whole state law, you've got just a purely state law issue of can you use public funds to benefit a private entity. So you have to keep it tied, you know, under that legislation, it doesn't have to be educational use. I mean, you could give it to somebody to use as a healthcare facility, but once you take away the district's use and operation and the educational purpose of it, then you're looking at a whole nother issue whether or not you issue tax-exempt bonds to pay for it. You're then looking at whether or not school district money can benefit a private entity.
And that, in some ways, we've talked about good things for good people as a way to get around the charter school law. It sounds like the constitutional issue that you just raised is separate from that. Even if we were to surplus the property, no charter school was interested, we still have that constitutional question. Okay. Other questions?
Doc, we will just to name, we will note that question and at least give some thought about, like, is there a broader community use issue that we want to explore?
Yeah, I mean, especially, yeah.
Maybe
Sounds
it's with
great.
these dollars, maybe it's not with these dollars, but the question remains, is there some broader community use that we think about, maintaining as a district property, programming from us, from them, whatever, as Ms. Turner has described. But we'll log that question for.
That sounds great, yeah. To bring a building that's maybe out of service back online, again, recognizing all the legal hurdles. I mean, that's why we got y'all, is to help us figure out stuff like that.
Let me flag one more thing. I think I'm right about this, but I would love for clarity about that, because sometimes I know enough just to be dangerous. I think some of that has to be forethought, because a lot of the taxable, non-taxable, that's at issuance, right? Like that piece has to be sort of solved. That piece of the puzzle has to be solved before you issue the bonds. There's
Yes.
not a conversion from one to the other, right?
Exactly. So what we have in this resolution that obviously we're giving information on that potentially can be considered at the October 3rd, we do have the ability to issue one or more taxable or tax-exempt series. But before you actually go into the market to sell, you would have to have that in place,
That's right.
an idea. Because otherwise, if you issued tax-exempt debt and then it turned into taxable, we'd be running into a lot of other issues.
And this is something you mentioned, but just it was rattling around the back of my head. The percentage permissible on bad use. It is a percentage question, right?
It is, yes. And we would have to analyze over, whatever the project
Gotcha.
is, how much. We'd have to get an architect or what have you to, kind of carve out a piece of the building, or whatever the circumstances would be. We'd have to analyze it and get with our,
Right.
tax committee and things like that to see. But there is a percentage of bad use
Right.
that
That-
can
and-
be done in a tax-exempt project, but it's very small.
Mhm. That's what I was thinking. That's really what I was looking for. It's like not 15%. It's
No,
like
it's
small.
more like
Right.
5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to kind of flag that as you were talking about the thinking through what our options are. Some of that we may need to get a little more granular, or not. You might want to keep it large and set some of that stuff to the side. But that's just something to put in the hopper, I think.
Gotcha.
Another,
Oh, and I was going to say, the resolution obviously has a not to exceed 57 million. We're talking about potentially doing 30 million. But once you get past your no protest stage, you have the ability to issue not to exceed the 57. So if you issued 30 and you decided to come back and do a second series once you've kind of worked through some of those other issues and agreed to the projects, you have the difference to do a second series as well.
That's good to know as well. And specifically in reference to the 57 versus the 30, is this an accurate characterization? The 57 is our cap.
That's it.
The
yes.
30 million basically keeps the impact on the taxpayers relatively constant around what it is right now.
It's really project-based. So to keep your bonds tax exempt, you have to be able to expend the funds within 3 years. So what they're looking at is, obviously the 57 million is what you could do with your full 3 mills. But if your projects only for the next 3 years allow you to do 30 million, then that's the amount that you have to do, because you want to make sure you spend your funds within the 3 years.
Okay. And if at any point over the 15-year period, we wanted to tap, if we do 30 and want to tap the additional 27, we could come back and tap that?
Once the no protest period is passed, yes.
Okay. One other question I asked, because I wanted to get this in front of the board members, was around our amortization schedule of debt. It's behind a password protected piece. Is there any way talk us through, the big thing I wanted to make sure is, I know when we were structuring the 2018 bond, you know, there were payments that would change over time, not often, but sometimes things go up when something rolls off, again, largely to keep the payments for the district similar. And I just wanted to make sure there's nothing, if you look at all of our debt and you take it all the way to maturity, that for future boards, there's no spikes that we're setting up a future board to have to navigate. What's that?
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you're exactly correct, and I'm going to go backwards. As I said, I wanted you to think of your debt in two separate silos: general obligation bonds, again, that were voted on by the people, and then the limited tax, or otherwise known as 3 mil notes. If we're just looking, well, in both cases, but we're talking about the limited tax, the 3 mil notes. If we're just looking at the limited tax notes, that annual payment we will keep level from there, because we know that we have those 3 mils that are going to be used to pay for it. So it's going to wrap around, but if you look at it from a bird's eye view, we're going to keep those payments the same. That's going to be underneath what you collect in those 3 mils. When we did the $65 million, I think it was in 2018 or 2019, we did the exact same thing, but we did it from the GO perspective. So we looked at all those bonds collectively, and we kept that payment relatively the same overall. So the tax levy to the taxpayers is going to look similar. It's going to look level all the way down. But you don't want to look at those together, because they have two different funding sources, two different securities, two different payment options.
So my question is, I feel good about the levy on the taxpayers. My question is more about the debt service from the district perspective, you know, in terms of this. So in 5 years, like, there's not a payment that goes from, like, you know, $1 million to $3 million.
Not from a bird's eye view of just the limited tax by themselves. It may have where, and so, for example, this 2012s are paying off in October this year.
Right.
So they'll pop off. So there's a little gap that we'll make sure that if we decide to do 30 million, 57 million, we fill in that gap. And then, just because I have it in front of me, the 2017s pay off in 2028. So when we issue this supposed 30 million, when you get to 2029, it'll go up a little bit. But when you look at the district's payments overall on just those limited tax bonds, it'll be level. We'll fill in that gap. So when the district goes out to set their budget, and I apologize about this, I don't have the overall debt schedule, because I knew I sent it earlier or whatever. And I apologize it behind password protected. But if your total annual debt service is, let's just say, $1, it will always be $1 all the way down. If one falls out, we increase the principal payment on another one, such that its overall debt service is just going to be $1 every single year. So you're not putting an additional burden on future boards, because you know that you're collecting $1.25 from your 3 mils. We're going to keep that annual debt service on those 3 mil notes at $1 all the way down.
Okay.
So hopefully I was able to explain that.
You have. Before we vote, I want to make sure, Mrs. Purnell, Dr. Green, that the board, that we see that whole schedule.
Let me do this. Let me send it back tomorrow, what we're thinking, and we'll use the 30 million as the number. We'll put that in there and wrap it around so we can show you what it looks like on just the 3 mil note side.
Well, I want to see the whole debt service, because my biggest concern is on our budget.
Correct.
And so I hear you 100% in terms of, we got the limited tax notes, the GO bonds, but when we approve the budget, like, what I don't want, and it's probably not this way, but I feel like there's something in the back of my mind when we were setting up the amortization schedule for the GO bond, that there were some larger payments that were moved into the future that moved in as other debt rolled off to keep district payments level overall, the total debt service.
Correct.
And so I just want to make sure when we bring this, because I want to do this, because I want all the things that we talked about, but what I don't want to do, if there is an instance where a payment was set to increase by $1 million or $2 million as a share of our overall debt service, to contemplating other debt rolling off.
Gotcha.
That we're not going to get to a point in place where a future board's going to, the COO comes up and says, we got $1 million, we got to increase our debt service by $1 million. And again, it's probably not that way, but there were fluctuations that I seem to remember. That's why I want to see the whole
Gotcha.
thing.
And I will make sure I send that over tomorrow.
Okay.
We'll be able to send it to you.
Okay,
All right.
great.
Thank you.
I don't think there's any other questions. Are we good? No, it's all good. It's all good. I will say, Mr. Thompson with government advisors, is that the name of the government consultants in the Butler Snow team? They worked on the 2018 GO bond, and one thing I appreciate is, obviously because of COVID and other just everything that was going on in the world, we had a 3-year window to get those dollars out. We did not get there. Appreciate all the work that you all did to help us figure out a path forward to be able to expend all those dollars beyond the 3 years. And so I want to lift that up in terms of just ways this team has helped us out in the past. So yeah. Thanks, Dr. Green. All right, board members. We're going to move on to our information action items. And thank you all for that information and for more to come. All right, we have the request to approve RFP 2023-16 for after-school summer academic enrichment programs, agreements, and activities for the Jackson Public School District. Dr. Samicia Stokes, our Executive Director of the Office of Innovative Strategy, will present this information. Dr. Stokes.
Yes, good evening.
Evening.
President Sivak, board members, Superintendent Dr. Green, and our JPS community. The administration presents for approval the after-school summer academic enrichment program agreements and activities for the Jackson Public School District. JPS scholars will have equitable access to high-quality free after-school programs with on-site programming at 37 school sites and off-site programming at 2 sites. Our JPS Transportation Department and Child Nutrition Department will provide transportation as well as an after-school meal at no cost to parents. Parents do have the option of picking up their child from the after-school site. Programming is Monday through Thursday from 2:30 to 5:30 for elementary students, 3:30 to 6 o'clock for middle school scholars, and 4:05 to 6:35 for high school scholars. After-school providers developed content and programs that align with and support our school's instructional programs and accelerate learning by providing literacy and math reinforcement and other pandemic-specific social supports focused on youth-centric strategies that build on the needs, strengths, and challenges of our youth. Enrichment offerings and activities, along with high-quality programming for our JPS scholars, range from foreign language, health and fitness, visual and performing arts, and cultural explorations to academic enrichment and high-dosage tutoring in reading and math, all to ensure that our students have access to high-quality levels of learning and engagement in our after-school ecosystem. Thank you in advance for your support. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Stokes. Board members, any questions? All right. Thank you. I think what we'll do, board, unless there's any objection, we'll go ahead and we'll just run through all of the information action and vote on them as a all together. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Stokes.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next, we have Attorney Harris, our general counsel, who will present the request to approve our workers' compensation insurance policy for Jackson Public Schools. Attorney Harris.
Good evening, Board President and Dr. Sivak, board members, Dr. Green. The Office of the General Counsel's Department of Risk Management is recommending that the Jackson Public School Boards of Trustees permit the Evans Agency to purchase workers' compensation insurance coverage through Bitco Insurance Company in order to continue to provide workers' compensation insurance policy for the district. Our policy has decreased. The premium has decreased from the previous years. The 2022-2023 policy was $1,996,300, and then the policy for this upcoming year, for the 23-24 year, is $1,869,617. And The decrease is in part due to our responsiveness in workers' compensation reporting. We're decreasing our lag time in reporting, which is enabling us to get employees treated more quickly and back to work.
Thank you, Attorney Harris. Board members, are there any questions, comments? Just a quick comment. I just want to lift up all the work that's been done to pull this request together. I can remember a time when we would be getting these requests 48, 24 hours before the policy was about to expire. So thank you for all the work. And also thank you for this is district-wide work that has gone into just having the premiums decrease. We saw what happened to our property insurance premiums. And so I know I had a number of questions about the team that was working to source insurance quotes. So it's good to see quotes come in that are decreasing, but also the work that's district-wide that went into that. So just wanted to lift up that your work, your leadership, Attorney Harris, and everyone else who made this happen.
And thank you. And this is something that our consultants will tell you, that we have a better hand in controlling. We can't control the markets with property insurances, but workers' compensation is something that we can do things to be proactive and to try to get the cost down.
Great. Thank you. Next, we have the request to approve the Legacy Scholars Grant Agreement with the Equal Justice Initiative for Provine High School. Attorney Harris.
The Office of the General Counsel is recommending that the Jackson Public School District's Board of Trustees approve the grant agreement between Equal Justice Initiative on behalf of Provine High School. Provine will be receiving a grant in the amount of $10,500 to cover the cost for 90 students and 9 chaperones to visit the Legacy Museum from Enslavement to Mass Incarceration and the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. And they'll be attending, and this is in Montgomery, Alabama, and they'll be attending on December the 20th, 2023. And also we do have a group. That group's trip got postponed, so they'll be attending tomorrow, the group from the Career Development Center. And so they will be at the first board meeting in October to report on their experiences there. So we're excited to have them, and they're excited to come and talk to you all as well.
Great. Thank you. Any questions, comments, board members? All right. Thank you, Attorney Harris.
Thank you.
Next, we have the request to approve the extension of the agreement between the Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality and the Jackson Public School District. This is for the purchase of our electric buses, I believe. And Ms. Harris Martin, our Executive Director of Transportation, will present this information.
Good afternoon, President Sivak, to the board members, and to Dr. Green. On this evening, the administration is recommending the approval to extend the original agreement between the Mississippi Department of Environment Quality and Jackson Public Schools. This agreement granted funds to us to allow us to purchase one bus. The grant was called the DARA grant, which is a diesel emission Reduction Act grant, and so we were awarded to purchase one bus in replace of a 2001 Freightliner bus. We are asking that the agreement be modified simply because the expiration date for this performance grant is on September 30th of this month. The bus will not be delivered until after that time. So it is needed for us to get an extension on this agreement. The Department of Environment Quality has agreed to offer us a no-cost time extension that will go through September 30th of next year. So we are asking that this be approved. Great.
Thank you.
Yes.
Board members, any questions or comments? Thank you, Ms. Harris Martin. Next, we have the request to approve the canceling and releasing of the 16-section lease agreement between Jackson Public School District and Garrett Tires and Trucking Services. Mr. Jackson, our Executive Director of Finance and Operations, will present this information.
Good evening, Dr. Seaback, board members, Dr. Green, JPS team. The administration recommends approval of canceling and releasing the 16-section lease agreement between the Jackson Public School District, Garrett Tires and Trucking Service, LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Board members, are there any questions, comments? Thank you. Next, we have the request to approve the purchase of buses, and Mrs. Purnell, who was with us earlier, our Executive Director of Business Services, will present this information.
Good evening again, with the protocol already been established. The administration is recommending that the board approves the purchase of, let me see how many buses we have here, of 3 buses from the pre-K collaborative grant that we have secured through the support of Dr. Cormack and his team with that endeavor. So, and these are state funds. I would like to mention that as well. These are not federal dollars. I know a question came up about the allowability of these funds. These are state funds that are granted through the Mississippi Department of Education. And this transportation, these buses were also a part of the budget that was submitted 3 years ago, I believe, initially.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Purnell. And I believe the next item is for the purchase of buses as well, but also using a different funding source.
Correct. The administration recommends that the board approves the purchase of 4 buses through the ESSER funds, that they have also allocated funds for that purpose as well. And it's 4 buses they are requesting that you all approve for them to purchase.
Thank you, Mrs. Purnell. Board members, any questions, comments? A couple of questions, just I think helpful for the public to hear. Mrs. Purnell, how many buses do we currently have in our fleet?
We have 209.
209. And do you have a sense of, what percentage are 15 years or older?
I do have that information that I think
Or just numbers are fine as well.
Oh, yeah. I do have that documentation. Give me 1 second. I do have that. Here we go. Out of the 209 buses that we do have, you said how many are old?
15 years or older.
15 or older, we have 57.
We have 57, and it looks like we have 57 that are 15 to 20 years old, and maybe even an additional...
We have additional 18 that's over 20 years old.
20 years.
Correct.
So a little over a third of our buses are 15 years or older, and so it's time. So it's great to see all the work that's going into it. I know we approved the purchase of 25 electric buses, so that's exciting. So again, just in keeping up with the conversation earlier around facilities, just upgrading how we show up, look, feel for our scholars. So.
And just a note on that, these 3 plus 5? 3 plus 4?
3 and 4.
So the 7 that we're asking for approval to purchase tonight would be an addition to the 209. But the 20, is it, or 25?
25.
25 electric buses, the requirement, as I understand it, is to swap those out. Replace the older buses, the ones that are, less energy efficient. So excited to have those on the fleet and to be a part. I think it'll be like 15%, somewhere on the order of about 15% of our buses would be electric buses. But again, they would swap out some of those older ones. And so there's still a need to continue to, and you'll likely see further requests over time to purchase and upgrade our fleet. Both from energy efficiency, but also just reliability and air conditioning and all those sorts of things.
But you actually just touched on a point that was a question that I had. The 7 that we're talking about tonight, those are additive.
Yes.
216 now, not 209, right? Assuming you get them. Okay, that was it.
Yep.
Great. Thank you. Okay, here we are. We are at the request to approve the resolution authorizing the employment of professionals in connection with the issuance of the limited tax note or series of taxable or tax-exempt notes not to exceed $57 million. Mrs. Purnell.
Okay. The administration recommends the approval of Butler Snow of Regional Mississippi, as noted as counsel, Dorian Turner as district counsel, government consultants for Madison as municipal advisor, and Cruz and Associates from Little Rock, Arkansas as underwriter or placement agent, and authorizes the approved professionals to prepare and distribute such resolutions and documents necessary to facilitate the sale and issuance of such note and/or notes not to exceed $57 million.
Thank you, Mrs. Purnell. Board members, any questions? Mrs. Purnell, could you run through the fee schedule for the consultant?
Okay. Nambi is coming. He does have that for me. Mr. Thompson.
No problem. Thank
Excuse me.
Again, Namdi Thompson with Government Consultants. What I sent over to the district a little bit earlier was the fees based off of the type of sale. So I'm sorry, I think every time I get up here, I always want to do like a bonds 101. So if you give me just a second, and then I'll answer your question. So when we go out and sell debt, notes, or bond issues, there's a couple of different ways we can sell and get the bonds out to the public or out to qualified institutional investors. One of the ways that we're considering is selling this through a private placement. When we sell it by a private placement sale, we will limit the amount of people or amount of institutions that we go out and sell the bonds to. It has some advantages and disadvantages, and I think I might have sent this over there to you, but I don't want to belabor the point. We're looking at those advantages and disadvantages of selling it that way. Another way we can sell it is through a negotiated sale. We'll go out and go sell it to retail investors. We can theoretically sell it to any of the people sitting in this audience today, as well as high net worth individuals. There are some advantages and disadvantages to that as well. Depending on the type of sale parameter, the costs are going to be a little bit different because you have to do certain things in order to get them out to public. So in answering your question, Dr. Sivak, if we were looking at a private placement sale, we will look somewhere around 2% of the cost of issuance. So if it is going to be $30 million, total cost of issuance for all the various professionals would be somewhere around $600,000. That's a not to exceed amount. But what we want to do an estimated cost right now, because one, that was one of the questions that was posed, but then also we have not been engaged, so it's hard for us to go out and talk to prospective purchasers. If we go out and go do it as a negotiated sale, it would be underneath 3% the cost of the bond issue. So again, if it's a $30 million transaction, total cost of issuance again for all the professionals would be somewhere around $900,000. So one would have a higher upfront cost, but, and I said I didn't want to go into the advantages and disadvantages. However, though, the one with the higher upfront costs possibly can get us a lower interest rate. And over the life of the transaction of 15 years, that difference in cost is more than covered, whatever. But we want to make sure, and one of my functions as a fiduciary to the district is try to figure out what's the best possible sales method for the district and what the projects you're trying to accomplish. So depending on each, it could either be 2% of the cost of issuance, 2% of the par amount, or 3%.
Thank you, Mr.
And again,
Thompson.
those are just not to exceed amounts, though.
And I think one important point, just looking at the two, the estimated cost for a private placement relative to a public offering is the fees of bond counsel, of district counsel, of municipal finance advisor. It's the same for either. It looks like the difference is largely in insurance and the underwriting fee.
Bingo, you're absolutely correct. So if we, on the one that's higher, the possibility is we can go sell it to retail investors. When we do that, we want to go get insurance so we can give some comfort to some of those purchasers, because it's not going to be the big, or for the most part, it's not going to be the big hedge funds. It's not going to be Bill Gates. We're going to sell it to smaller investors who are going to buy it in $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 blocks. They like to have insurance on there so that if there was any problems 5 years down the line, they're covered. And so you pay that upfront fee for the insurance, and then we sell it based upon the insurance, and the rate can come down some. Also, on the underwriter standpoint, now since they're selling it to, and the whole world is their oyster at this point, they have to have more of an incentive to go out and find those smaller investors. Whereas if we do a private placement, they're just talking to the big hedge funds. And again, we'll go back and forth. We'll figure out which one's going to be the best for the district, and then we'll make our findings to the district and see if they agree that this is the way we should do it. But neither one has been decided yet.
Great, thank you. Any other additional questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Thompson. Thank you, Mrs. Purnell. Mrs. Purnell, are you also doing the monthly financial report? Okay, great.
Okay. The administration recommends that the board approve the monthly financial report for the month ending August 31st, 2023. There are a few highlights from the report. You know, we always have the statement of fund balance, the budget status report, the bank reconciliation, and the cash flow. So from the statement of fund balance, these numbers are preliminary, but they're pretty close to being the real numbers. I'm real close. I think today, Dr. Green, I can say that the Federal Exchange Transaction System report has been approved. So we are good with that. So we are at the point of closing June 30th. So that's a good note on that. So these numbers are very, very close to exactly what I think the final will actually be. But for 2024 beginning fund balance, it's roughly $22 million. I think that's where we're going to end, and we will bring that back on October 3rd board meeting to let you know exactly what the amended budgets are and where we ended. But I think this is going to be probably our very good close numbers that you'll see that same number going forward compared to $21 million last year. So a little increase, so that's good on that note for that. For the fund balance as of August 31st, our fund balance right now is at that time was $16.2 million, roughly $200,000 lower than what it was last year around this time. Expenditures did exceed revenues, approximately about $6.5 million. Our 16th section revenue is pretty much on target. We have about 17.42% of the budget at this time. So that's where our fund balance stand currently. On our special revenues, child nutrition continues to have a significant fund balance, which is supporting the school's cafeteria, which is great. Our special revenue, as we all know, that we have the drawdowns, and when the drawdowns come, then we will, and there's always a lag. You know, we have 1 month, then the next month, so when we catch up, you still have other expenditures. As we all know, we have to expend the funds before you can actually request those. So we had about $7.1 million, down a little bit than what it was, I think, last month on where our expenditures are. We were able to draw at least, I think, about $14 million last month, so we did pretty good on getting those funds in, so it wasn't really bad on those, so we did pretty good there. On the budget status, here we are pretty much right now, we like 8.1% of our revenue of being collected of budget at this point in time. And expenditures, we've spent about 11.3% of the budget at this current time. And that's pretty much moderate in what we had previously. I think last year around this time, our revenue was roughly about 11%, and our expenditures were roughly about 13% at that particular time at the same venture. And we have, okay, also all the district bank accounts are with approved, bank-approved depositories, along with the board as well, and the bank statements are reconciled through July 31st of 2023 at currently, which we are doing them appropriately. The cash flow, the ending cash flow balance for this month is roughly about 2.4. Compared to last year, we were about 1.5, and I think that's pretty much contributing to some of the funds that we were able to draw more this month, and then therefore we didn't have to loan as much to some of the federal aid departments grants that we had to do previously. So I think that helped us in that endeavor. Other management key performance indicators, I think that Mr. Burke wanted me to share with you all as of August the 31st, that our overall revenues collected is about $565,000. It's at 83% greater than last year. The overall expenditures, $547,000. It's less than last year. Ad valorem is a little less, which is normal for us around this time at this point in the game, and our personnel and fringe benefits lines is a little greater than last year. Of course, with all the different raises and different things that the district did put in place for this year, so they would be greater. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mrs. Purnell. Board members, any questions? on that very thorough report. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, board members, we've run through items A through I. Is there a motion to approve?
I so move.
Second.
Ms. Hilliard has moved, Mrs. Thompson has seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you, everyone, for all your work tonight. To our bond counsel, our municipal advisor, our note counsel, Attorney Turner. We look forward to working with you, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. All right. Next, we will move on to our consent agenda item for finance. All the consent agenda items have been reviewed by the board previously, and we've had an opportunity to ask questions of the administration. Are there any further questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda item finance?
Motion.
Second.
Mr. McGuffey has moved, Ms. Hilliard has seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Next, we have our consent agenda items personnel. Board members, please note Ms. Williams forward over the additional personnel items. Yes, I skipped general. Thank you. We have our consent agenda items general. All the consent agenda items have been reviewed by the board. We had an opportunity to ask questions. Are there any further questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda general?
Motion.
Second.
Mr. McGuffey has moved, Ms. Hilliard has seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you, Attorney Turner. Just I2 and I4.
I2.
Just I2. Okay. Board members, we have our consent agenda item personnel. I did want to note we have the additional positions that Mrs. Williams sent over. We will be speaking about I2, and are we pulling I2, or we're pulling I2 from the consent agenda personnel. We're going to discuss item I4. We're pulling I4 for discussion in executive session. Is that it? Or I3?
So you would consider it, because until you actually vote.
Okay, we're gonna move I4
For consideration in executive.
for consideration in executive session, and
We're pulling I2.
just I2. We're not doing I3.
Right.
Okay, so we are pulling I2 for approval. We are moving I4 for consideration in executive session. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the remaining items other than I2 and I4.
Thank you.
Second.
Mr. McGuffey has moved, Ms. Hilliard has seconded. All in favor? Wait, was okay.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. The motion carries. All right, board members, we do have a couple of items for consideration in executive session. Is there a motion to close the meeting to consider executive session?
I so move.
Second.
Ms. Hilliard has moved, Mr. McGuffey has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.